Hello. You know, as the world gets more desperate, something I predicted would happen is happening. As a friend of mine contacted me about entered a credit card in on a service, and I've been billing him surreptitiously now for months, and he just found out about it. There's the amount of pilfering that's going on out there in the world is kind of excessive. I predicted this. It's very unfortunate. You really, especially now, and it's always been the case, have to really have your head on a swivel. I hate to say that, but that's when people that are greedy, they get more desperate. They start doing desperate things. Desperation, as they say, leads to desperation. There's a link to a little Instagram video. I'll post it below. Of course, I've been talking about this. It actually really shows it. Harmonic interference. This video is about energy and space, and specifically the physics and metaphysics of space. And unfortunately, we've all been brainwashed by science fiction movies, Star Trek, Star Wars, all the rest of that. The idea of curved space, and we're going to bend space and fold space and all the rest of it. The only time, and this is not an exaggeration, where Nikola Tesla nearly foams at the mouth, not in anger, not that Tesla ever got angry that we know of, but is railing against relativity and quantum nonsense was starting in his later years. The idea that space is something with properties that you could actually bend and warp. And Tesla said this is absolutely ridiculous. He said, I refuse to subscribe to something, regarding space, bending, or, things reacting to or working upon space itself. And that's about to discuss, and specifically the physics and metaphysics of space. But the little video below, and I'll pin it, is a little Instagram video. There's an antenna about 1.5 miles in the distance, an AM broadcast station antenna. It's putting out 10,000 watts of just regular, amplitude modulation radio, right? The antenna that he's standing at, which is a nearly identical antenna, is completely disconnected. There's no power going to it. There's nothing. There's the antenna, and they've taken it down. So there's nothing there. But there is two balls. It's a metal ball with a rod that one goes into the ground. There's the other rod, and this is for actually hooking up to decharge the antenna so you could climb up it without getting electrocuted, for example. Of course, you have to turn the antenna off. Someone's going to work on the top of it, and they have to do that to change those light bulbs that flash so the aircraft don't crash into them. So the whole thing is completely off. And he actually takes a long screw attached to a plastic pipe, and he touches the ball that's coming off of the antenna that's not hooked to anything. Okay? Nothing is hooked to it. And it's welding that screw very quickly. So, it's basically like he's welding, but there's nothing there other than a plastic pipe and the screw. The point being is that all of these so-called professors who are mental midgets by definition, they will tell you that the transfer of power is the flow of electrons. What's happening is sympathetic resonance. They say, well, it's the electromagnetic energy of the AM broadcast station transmitting at 10,000 watts. And he shows it to you in the little 1-minute video. It's about 1.5 miles in the distance. If you're able to put a dome over those two antennas and suck all the air out, nothing has changed as far as that effect. The amount of charge that's being built up on that antenna that's not hooked to anything, such that if you touch it, you can get electrocuted. And he shows you that by placing the screw to the ball. It's a connection node, like I said, for working on the antenna. And it welds us. There's, at least 3, 4, 5,000 watts of power. It doesn't make any difference. The point being is what's going on there. There's not electrons flowing from one antenna to the next. You say, well, it's electromagnetic energy in the case of amplitude modulation radio. It's easy to destroy these atomists. The same people that, and this is not my opinion, this is a fact, the same people that actually posit the atomism of relativity and of quantum, they flat out, bar none, outright deny the ether. Okay? If you deny the ether, you have to replace it with something, and they replaced it with space. Okay? They think it is something. There's not electrons flying from one antenna to the next, and it's building up on that antenna that is not connected to anything that the guy shows you has got a lot of charge on it. You know, you touch, you can get electrocuted. I mean, it'll weld a screw there, and it took them like about 2 seconds to weld it. So it's easy to destroy these. I mean, you think electrons are flying through the air? These people will tell you flat, excuse me, the flow of power, the flow of electrons. Well, yes it is. It always is. Well, what about wireless power induction? This is wireless power induction. It's sympathetic resonance. You got another antenna that's soaking up energy from the medium, and the medium is not the air. The medium is the ether itself. All fields are ether perturbation modalities. The 10,000 watt AM broadcast station antenna that's transmitting, okay? Well, that second antenna is acting like a sponge and soaking up that power. You can say power, you can say energy, I don't really care. But that power and energy didn't magically appear on that unconnected antenna out of nowhere. And it's not electrons flying through the air. And it's not photons, which is an arbitrary concept. I mean, Nikola Tesla said there's no such thing as an electron. No such thing as a light particle either. This, if you have a brain rot between your ears and you think everything is bumping particles, and that's not how nature works, then you can create all these imaginary particles. You know, the phenomena, of course, is real. Light's a compound energy circuit, and all radio, whether it's X-ray, visible light, radio, gamma radiation, X-ray, all of that is electromagnetic spectrum. It's a compound ether circuit. It's compound field modality. Well, there's not electrons or photons flying through the air. So it's easy to destroy these people. And the point is not about destroying them in a debate. The point is you're singling out the fact that everything that they've got their systems built upon is completely wrong. Now, you can make correct observations, but incorrect conclusions. The same is true of the double slit experiment, which is very funny. I get questions all the time about that. Because the double slit experiment starts out with the supposition of the light, which is being experimented on. But there's no branch of science that has any clue what light is. They think it's a wave, a particle, a wave-particle duality. It's a photon, and it's moving, and that movement has a speed. All of those things are incorrect about light, but I've spoken about that endlessly. It's a neat little video to watch. You ask yourself, or take that little 1-minute video to your PhD in physics and astrophysics. Why don't you explain this? Well, it's transfer of energy. It's flying across space, and it's collecting on that unconnected. That's not what's occurring. By the way, the discoverer of the principle of the electron, which is not a particle, J.J. Thomson, accurately said what a principle of an electron is. That's 1 unit of dielectric induction. That's what it is, not a particle. Now, people have loved to attack me when I've said no such thing as an electron particle. Oh, you're crazy. What do you know? You fat, bald, tattooed guy, where's your PhD at? Where's your peer reviews? Like, I'm not quoting myself here. I'm quoting Tesla, Heaviside, Dollard, Walter Russell. I'm quoting the gods of field theory. He said there's no such thing as an electron particle. This leads into space. We actually have to ask ourselves about existence. Zero what? Zero. There's 2 principles of zero. There's existence and what is manifest and objective, and then there's the zero of what is not there. And that kind of sounds convoluted and slightly nutty, but I'll explain it very, very simply. And of course, if you say it's not electrons, and then what they'll say regarding the second antenna, they'll say it's lines of force, or they'll say it's fields, or they'll say it's energy, but they never define a field, they never define the term energy, and lines of force is a conceptual English conflation. It's a conceptualization because lines of what? Line is not a thing. Force of what, by what, and upon what. Once again, it's just so easy to destroy these people. So we have to ask ourselves about existence. Well, if it doesn't exist, it must be zero. It doesn't exist. People say this about ghosts and whatnot. Well, they don't exist. I'm like, well, what do you mean by exist? Exist, literally in English, is quite accurate. It means existence, means to be outside of itself. We have something as manifest that before was not manifest. Of course, we experience this entire universe through holes in our body, in our eyes, our ears, nose, so on and so forth. Phenomena, zero or equal to what is unmanifest. In the case of the torus, which is, by the way, the whole footprint of anything that has mass or magnitude in this universe is due to one thing and one thing only. Mass and magnitude, i.e. the vector of creation space, is a toroidal geometry manifestation, which of course magnetism is a dielectric field, of magnetism. Well, what's in the center of a torus? We say a torus is a donut. Right here in the center of the toroidal field, if I actually smush it down a little bit, of course we know what's in the center of a donut. There's nothing there. Center of a galaxy, there's nothing there either. Well, we know now that every galaxy has a supermassive black hole in it. A hole? Will we call a hole zero? Well, we know all the matter is kind of flushing down into that hole. Well, the center of these countless thousands of galaxies we've looked at, we know the center of the Milky Way galaxy is a supermassive black hole. We can actually see these 4 stars that are spinning around, basically spinning around the toilet bowl of the Milky Way galaxy, about to be flushed down there. We also, too, know that these holes, i.e. so-called black holes, are emitting out trillions and trillions and trillions of tons of hydrogen. It's called galactic jets. There are also 2 called astrophysical jets. Hydrogen, of course, is super, super high energy light. The maximum rate of induction, we actually have a circular frequency, is the maximum rate of capacitance. In other words, there's no further propagation. And when there's no further propagation because capacitance has been reached, we actually have this neat little thing called the hydrogen atom. So the metaphysics of space, capacitance and rarefaction. What about the center of the toroidal geometry of magnetism itself? All spatial is impotency of energy. Space is not a thing. Space is the absence of something. But what is space the impotency of? What is space the impotency or the rarefaction of? And that is of energy, of the dielectric. Magnetism being the dielectric field. This is what happens when I think about 10 things at once sometimes. I'll actually trip over 10 thoughts running at the same time. They kind of trip over themselves. We get the word in Pali and Sanskrit, ka, in Greek, I said Greece, hello. In Greek, the word is chaos. We think of chaos as something different as we ideate it, but ka or chaos. Not emptiness, but empty of. You know, the body is empty of the soul. A radio is empty of a signal. But we think in terms, unfortunately, human beings think in terms of phenomena rather than noumena. We're fascinated by the broadcast, which of course is not the signal, but there's no signal in this. There is nothing at the center of the torus. And I've got probably 400 videos of the supercell where you can actually see on the side of either magnet, you see this black hole. Well, I mean, it's a perfect representation of zero. Everything emits from there and everything returns to there. The plane of inertia, you know, the midpoint between, the so-called polarity of a magnet, which if I could do this, could be the midpoint right here of this torus, which would be representative of magnetism. There is no magnetic flux. You actually stick a Gauss meter between 2 magnets and put them together, thereby forming one magnet. You have no Gaussian flux. Right here you can actually see right in the middle, there's nothing there. The more you actually amplify the magnetism, that means the more powerful the dielectric is, and I've actually shown you super powerful magnets. I think I got one back here. Do I have it back here? I've got it somewhere. I got all sorts of magnets floating around this place. There's a super large black hole on it. The more powerful you make it, the bigger that zero, or that black hole is on the side of that powerful magnet. It's like an N60 Gauss magnet. It's actually got a black oxidized coating on it. Thinking in terms of the metaphysics of space or of zero, and of course space is a zero, but of course space is true impotency. The impotency or the rarefaction of energy always manifests as force, and the after effect of force, of course, is volume, mass, and magnitude. Every scientist agrees on Earth that I agree with them also. Every atom is 99.99.999% empty space. You know, it's basically like a tiny BB in the center of a super gigantic bubble of energy. Of course, every atom is an electrostatic dynamo. But the volume of that same dynamo, the after effect of the force of what it is magnetism. All mass and magnitude is magnetism. People say, why are you so interested in magnetism? Well, that's what gives shape, mass, and magnitude to everything in this universe. The wheel of phenomena, and then of course is a representation, the symbolism both in Vedanta and original Buddhism. You actually see these I hate to use the word Buddhist because nobody knows less about Buddhism than a so-called Buddhist does, is this little wheel symbol that they wear around their neck. And it's been both in ancient Egypt and India and Greece, the metaphysical symbolism for countless thousands of years. The original wheel, of course, not like our car axles where the axle is actually turning, is this hole or nave at the center, which nothing is. You can stick your hand through there and there's nothing there. All the action is occurring. The further out you go, the more action there is, the more movement there is. But it's all turning on that little empty center right there. That little empty center at the center of that wheel is no different than that black spot, which is at the center of either pole of a magnet. Magnet doesn't technically have poles, but this is how we conflate through crude, unfortunate human understanding, polarity of magnetism. And the center of that, you could actually see a bright white line underneath the ferrocell, for example. That's where all magnetic flux vanishes. That is the rest nexus. The center, every whole, like I said, you think human beings would be able to connect these things, yet we think of terms of things that don't exist. Zero doesn't exist. It is not a thing. In the case of numbers, it's a placeholder. But it's not a thing itself. Actually, Greeks considered 0 not to be a number. There's no 0 there. 1 wasn't even a number. It was considered the principle of all things. Wave, space, time, shadows, emptiness, chaos, quantum, negative charge, force, electrons, photons, virtual photons. These are conceptions that human beings have in their head, kind of like leprechauns and unicorns and other fantastical beasts, like out of a Harry Potter movie. We know they don't exist in the case of unicorns and leprechauns, but human beings do think that waves exist. We do think that zeros exist. There's more zeros in our bank account. That equals a lot more money. But that's what placeholders. We have to think in terms of zero in two respects. The ultimate zero that human beings have everything upside down and backwards is the massive, and it actually looks like a zero if you're able to look at it end on, is the zero that makes up the volume of the magnetic field. If you actually put this on its side, look at the donut, well, there's a big zero. So there's that zero of form and phenomena which is out here. Yeah, that's what people are fascinated by. But the zero that's true, the unmanifest center here, that is rest or energy. Out here is force and motion. So there's two zeros. There's the zero of phenomena, epiphenomena, and phenomena, and the zero of the unmanifest, which is rest, which is energy. That magnetic field, and you would identify it as polarity. We got the North Pole, we got the South Pole. We have the magnetic field around the magnet. Well, the energy of all that stuff that fascinates you is at the center there where there is no magnetic flux. There is nothing at all. All space, if you don't remember anything in this video, you should remember this. All space is the impotency of energy. Zero is to number as is possibility. Zero is to number as is possibility is to actuality. Excuse me, let me repeat that again. It's what happens when I think 10 steps ahead in my thinking. Zero is to number as possibility, i.e. zero, is to actuality. Zero is the number as possibility is to actuality. Now possibility is the zero of the center where there is rest. That's possibility. Actuality is out here, possibility is here. Well, there's nothing there. I can't do anything with this. Well, that's rest. This is actuality and this is possibility. What is potential is not actual. What is actual impotency. Now, the periphery of everything is space. The volume of this torus is actuality, but that is true impotency. The negative image of pure potential being ether or energy, take your pick, God, 0 point, the negative image of that is actuality. But people are only fascinated by actuality. They're not fascinated, unfortunately, by rest or possibility, i.e. the ether, i.e. 0 point. Zero equals x minus x. Hello there. X minus x equals 0. But what kind of zero are we talking about? We're talking about the zero that actually is. This is the zero that actually is, or the zero that's unmanifest. Really, to understand most metaphysics, both Greek, Indian, and Egyptian, you actually have to understand what type of zero we're talking about. There's nothing there. Okay, that doesn't exist then. Like, no, I said it's not there. It's unmanifest. It's kind of like the soul. You go looking for a soul in the body, you're not going to find one. There's no soul in the body, therefore the soul doesn't exist. That's not what I said. I said it's not there. There's no signal in the radio, but there's no doofus on earth that thinks that signal doesn't exist. Now, if I use the word exist as it actually is meant, it means existence. In other words, it's not manifest. Signal is manifest because it actually has a transverse EM signal. All embodiment, all transcendence, all theurgy, everything in the universe points to this. We see nothing that is, but we confuse nothing it is, nothing as it is, with it doesn't exist. Like, no, it's the unmanifest we're looking at there. We're looking at a hole where nothing is, but all potentiality exists there. We got these holes at the center of galaxies all throughout the cosmos. And we can see there's countless images of galactic jets, also called astrophysical jets. These big holes, call them black holes, I don't care what you call them, are emitting out trillions and trillions and trillions of tons of hydrogen, which is, once again, super, super high energy light. This nothing that is, and by is I mean existence, i.e. phenomena, is the seat of all sheer potentiality. This is the secret to both physics and metaphysics. This is the secret to understanding anything that's hardcore in theurgic writings, Plotinus, Numenius, Syrianus, the Bhagavad Gita, Principal Upanishads, Advaita Vedanta, Original Buddha. All of this, you have to actually understand what zero means, or emptiness. Of course, there's no such thing as empty. Something is empty of something else. Human beings think that emptiness exists. Like, there's no such thing as emptiness. What do you mean? Well, it would have to have an attribute or a property whereby which you could say that's emptiness. Like, you were in it, right? I experienced emptiness. Yes, I did. Were you in it? Yes, I was. So it wasn't empty because you were in it. How do you know you're in emptiness? Because it would have to have some sort of attribute or property whereby which you would say this is empty. But since emptiness by definition, true definition, doesn't have any properties or attributes, nobody could ever identify it. It doesn't exist. You can't even theoretically, in your brain, like a unicorn or a leprechaun, postulate emptiness. It in no way, shape, or form exists. It's a complete impossibility. It can't exist. People, for some reason, can't process that in their head. So, zero of the unmanifest, i.e. the center, versus zero of the manifest universe, relative to rest or to the ether. Zero, or the rest of number, is also, too, of course, the matrix of all number, and that's really important. If you could actually understand that, you could understand a lot of stuff. Zero, or the rest of number, yeah? Of course, zero is not a number according to the Greeks, the ancient Greeks. And it's not a number. Zero, or the rest of number, is also, too, of course, and necessitatively so, the matrix of all number. Everything in this universe, you know, and I know there's a joke in this, yeah? Everything in the universe either goes into a hole or out of a hole. There's trillions of tons of hydrogen coming out of so-called black holes. Black hole is nothing. It's a big, big hole in the universe. If you mean it's a hole in a hole, you already think space is... And this is where quantum and relativity fail big time. They fail all over the place. They're atomists, by the way, which is their huge, huge failure. And Tesla said, there's no such thing as space having property. Tesla said that. That's where he foams at the mouth. Space is not a thing. You know, a center is a matrix. The center of a wheel is a hollow. But everything happens through that hollow of the wheel, yeah? Center of magnetism, there is no magnetism. That's provable with a Gauss meter, by the way. Center of gravity, there is no gravity. Two objects, by the way, just say there's nothing in the universe but two objects are kind of close, relatively. You know, they're slowly moving towards one another, slowly, faster, 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 boom, they collide. They're not accelerating towards one another. They're accelerating towards the erasure of space. Space is the rarefaction of possibility, potential, energy, i.e. the ether itself. That doesn't mean space has properties. What that means is that they say nature abhors a vacuum. Metaphysically and fundamentally, that's correct. That's why all objects are accelerating towards a null pressure point between both. Correct observation, objects are accelerating in space towards each other. They're not. They're accelerating towards the lowest null pressure point between both. And that is a huge distinction with a minor difference. But people don't get that. We have to understand the zero that is completely upside down to the zero that you ideate. The zero that you think of, like in the whole of this torus, is the only transcendent metaphysical zero. What's out here that you think is actuality, form and phenomena, acceleration and mass and magnitude, is the actual zero. Point being is that the zero out here that you praise and love is, I got a message from Goofball there, my rich buddy. The zero out here that you praise is the unreal zero. There's a more accurate way, so I had to rephrase that in my own head as I'm going along here. You know, it's amazing how easy it is for me to see this in my mind, and yet something so simple as the two types of zeros is quasi-hard to communicate. You're in love with the zero out here, but I'm telling you the only real zero is right here. The unmanifest pure potential, i.e. rest. Well, there's nothing there. This is nothing. Yeah, but the thing that you think is something out here is the only actual nothing. It's epiphenomena. It has a beginning in time and an end in time. You know what doesn't have a beginning in time or an end in time, and therefore is rest, therefore is energy, therefore is ether, is right here. Well, there's nothing there. You're a lunatic, you know, and those tattoos have melted your brain. It's like, no. Everything in this universe comes into a whole or out of a whole. But the zero that you think is unreal is the real zero. And the zero that you think is the real is the actual zero. In other words, it's nothing. It's phenomena. It's the mirage. It's the hologram. So this is the metaphysics and physics of the manifest and the unmanifest. So you have to think in terms of possibility versus actuality, because the possibility zero is the only real, i.e. rest, i.e. energy. I'll have a link to that antenna below, and sometimes in my videos I'll think about 10, 20 things at once while I'm talking. And that's where I'm not stumbling to know what to say, I'm stumbling over my own thoughts. That happens once in a rare while. I did that a few times in this video, but it also too amuses me to no end that something so simple in my own head, it's like, how do you communicate this where they're able to understand it? Kind of like right here in this shell, right here there's nothing, there's a hole right there, there's nothing here, but we got all this fascinating stuff out here. This is the phenomena, which is the zero in actuality, and this is a zero in potentiality, because it all started right here, where there's a little hole. I know you can't see it, it's very small. But everybody's amused by the beauty and the golden ratio out here. It's like, I get it, I get the beauty, but that's not what you should be focused on. Not if you're interested in transcendence or theurgy or the metaphysics of the Greek, Indians, and Egyptians, i.e. of monism itself. Thanks so much for watching. If you like these videos, send me an email, or any donations always warmly welcome. Have a lovely week. Thank you.